Hello there. Welcome to another episode of Deck Musings. So, following on chronologically, we are up to now this point in Magic's history. Very interesting time. So we're at that low, if you imagine set size as like this sort of fluctuating curve, a bit like a sine wave, I suppose. We're now in the trough, so the previous oldest block has rotated out. We've got the whole of Onslaught plus the appropriate core edition, so 8th edition. And at this point we're still into a situation where core sets are released every 2 years. So when a new core set comes in, the old one goes out. Yearly, that didn't happen until M10 is when we had yearly core sets. So we're still having core sets every 2 years. And we have the first set of the new block, which is the Mirrodin block. And so we are at that lowest part of the curve in terms of set size. There's also a note here about sets becoming legal on the 20th of a given month. I did notice here the set in question, so this will be Mirrodin. This came out on October the 2nd. So I'm assuming what the pre-release would have been the week before that, maybe? Something like that. At least that's how it was always done. Yeah, pre-release September the 20th to the 21st, and the release was on October the 2nd. So yeah, something around there. It's interesting because I'm wondering back then as well whether there was a period in Magic's history where you'd almost have like two sets of release events, one around the time of the pre-release and then a second lot around the time of the actual release as well. I'm not sure when that started being a thing, and I'm not sure when that stopped being a thing. So, now one of the problems I always have when we're in this period of, doing Deck Musings episodes around the time of the first set of a new block is just finding tournament data that sort of reflects the inclusion of, some cards from the new set. This has always been a problem in this series. So the way I do it, and I'm doing it this time, is I sort of fall back to looking at a theme deck, appropriate theme deck, which sort of illustrates something major about the set thematically. So that's what I'm doing here. I don't mind doing that. I quite enjoy, as you know, looking at theme decks, picking them apart. But just so you know. And I thought what I'd do as well as a lead into this is it is interesting to look at the sort of succession of, you have a Pro Tour, GPs that sort of feed into the next Pro Tour and then the next Pro Tour and so on. Rinse and repeat. So if we look at prior to the release of Mirrodin, the last Pro Tour, which was in Boston, was Team Sealed. Onslaught, Legion, Scourge, so that's the whole of the previous block. And then they had Team Rochester Draft, also same 3 sets there. Then we have some Grand Prix, and you'll notice one of these occurred before the release of Mirrodin, one around about the release, but if we assume this to be true, sets becoming legal on the 20th, then I'm assuming Mirrodin wasn't legal at this point in terms of tournament play. It's technically still not legal if you go by that, by the wiki article, and now we're legal. So all of these are, we've got block constructed, Rochester Draft, Rochester Draft, Rochester Draft. So then we move into a period when Mirrodin is going to be legal, and the Pro Tour that coincides with that, or the Pro Tour event, which is New Orleans, is extended. So it's a much larger card pool. And really, if you look through, you look through the Grand Prix that occur. So we've got Rochester Draft. Doesn't specifically say what set, but I'm assuming it's the most recent set. And then we've got Extended again, GP Anaheim. We've got Pro Tour Amsterdam. So it's a Rochester Draft of Mirrodin. Now I have tried doing decks built from draft tournaments, but it's a little bit all over the place. There's often a lot of cards to talk about, so that's why I often don't bother doing that and do a theme deck instead. And then when we go through, we get another cluster of Grand Prix, Extended, Sealed Booster Draft. So we get to Kobe, Pro Tour Kobe, and that's Mirrodin Block Constructed, Mirrodin Darksteel, and that's what we're going to be looking at next week, because we'll be up to Darksteel. So it just gives you a bit of a background at that time. Sometimes it's interesting to look at that, see what's going on. So what we're going to do is, because, a bit of a dearth of high-level tournament information, I'm going to look at a event deck, the Bait and Bludgeon one. So no sideboard here in this episode. So it's a blue-black theme deck focusing on affinity for artifacts. And that was the big thing here. Ability words, imprint, entwine. We'll see what we see here. So the Bait and Bludgeon deck shows your opponents the value of affinity, one of the new Mirrodin mechanics. Cards with affinity for artifacts cost one less to play for each artifact you control. I'm just going to switch back here. And as a result of the whole affinity thing in Mirrodin, we'll see as we go through, certain cards getting banned. We might often, I'll point out, there's certain formats now which some of the cards we're going to look at are also, banned in. So affinity had a real big impact on the meta at the time. But this is this week's deck. Lots of Myrs. So let's have a look at it. Right, I will redo this to the grid. I like my grids. Okay, so no surprise, we've got 9 artifacts. Some of which in and of themselves have affinity for artifacts as well. So we have Æther Spellbomb, so 1 to cast. And the other thing on this is, and we'll be looking at some Mirrodin cards in the Friday artwork video. And I'll have to remember to flag this up because we'll be looking at the artwork, obviously. But what I'll do is, as I did in the previous 8th edition episode, I'll sort of, as I bring the card on screen, I will bring it bottom to top. So we go through the rules text before we get onto the artwork. And that way we can chat about some of the weirdness. So you'll notice these are devoid of colour. Yeah. On there. That changed, but for this era we have something weird going on with the colours of the mana cost in the rules text. So Æther Spellbomb, 1 to cast. You can sacrifice it for a blue and return target creature to its owner's hand. 1, sacrifice it, so 1 mana of any colour, draw a card. Scale of Chiss-Goria, 3 to cast. It's affinity for artifacts, so with affinity for artifacts,
the spell costs 1 less to play for each artifact you control. So in this deck, you'll notice there is a lot of artifacts, and the more artifacts you have in play, obviously any cards with affinity cost 1 less to play. You'll see a lot of these as well are mana of any colour, so it costs 1 mana of any colour less to play. So because of that, you are going to get to a situation where some spells with enough artifacts in play cost nothing. You may play Scale of Chiss-Goria anytime you could play an instant. So it's flash, I suppose. It wasn't called flash at that point. So you've got affinities with flash. Affinities. Got affinity on the mind. Artifacts with flash. Tap, target creature gets +0/+1 until end of turn. We've got Serum Tank, another 3 to cast artifact here. So whenever it or another artifact comes into play, put a charge counter on it. 3 tap, remove a charge counter from Serum Tank, draw a card. Talisman of Dominance. So there were these talismans in the set, and we'll see all this when we dig down, because we'll see the cycles. So tap to add 1 colourless mana. You can tap it, add blue or black to your mana pool, but if you do that, then you deals you 1 damage. So we've seen land before with this sort of setup. Tooth of Chiss-Goria. So 3 to cast, affinity for artifacts. You may play Tooth of Chiss-Goria anytime you can play an instant. Target creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn. So yeah, so it's this but flipped. 22 creatures. You'll notice here again a lot of artifacts. So this is laid out. Actually, let me lay this out. Mana value. That's a bit better, particularly with creatures. So we have 2 stone walls, 2 steel walls. I'm a bit too chilled at the moment, I'm afraid, but that's, yeah, for good or bad. Yeah, 1 to cast, 0/4, and it just reminds you walls can't attack. Two Leaden Myrs, 2 to cast, 1/1, taps for black. Myr Retriever, 2 to cast, 2 of those, so 1/1. And when it's put into a graveyard for play, return another target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. That's a pretty cool deck, actually. 2 to cast for Silver Myr. There's 2 of these. There's a lot of 2s in this deck, 2 ofs. Tap, add blue to your mana pool, it's a 1/1. 2 Bottle Gnomes, 3 to cast, 1/3. You sack it, you gain 3 life. This is quite an old card, actually. It's been reprinted a few times, which no doubt we'll see. 3 Frogmites, 4 to cast, has affinity for artifacts. So this is the first creature which is going to benefit in terms of a reduced mana cost for us playing other artifacts. And this is any artifact as well. So 2/2 for 4, but with affinity. And you'll notice this reoccurring theme with affinity. These creatures were not on curve unless you had lots of affinity for artifacts, or sorry, you had a lot of artifacts, and then that way they got closer and closer to being on curve until you reach the point where, as I've said, you know, you could cast them for nothing. 1 Lodestone Myr, 4 to cast, 2/2 with trample. Tap an untapped artifact you control. Lodestone Myr gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Notice a 4 for 2/2, but doesn't have affinity on it. But you can pump it by tapping an untapped artifact. And it has trample. So, yeah, pseudo evasion. Nim Shrieker. It's a flyer. So 3 and a black for a 0/1 flyer. But it has this fire breathing, but it's facilitated through artifacts. So the more artifacts you have in play, the more, you know, the bigger the power gets. Doesn't affect the toughness. Somber Hoverguard,
5 and a blue for a 3/2 with flying, but does have affinity for artifacts. Although with this one, the lowest you're going to get it down to is a single blue, unless there's something in this deck or in this set that is able to reduce that blue cost. But yeah, so in this case, you can't get to a situation where it's free. And then we got 3 Myr Enforcers, 7 to cast. But it does have affinity for artifacts. It's 4/4. And then 8 and 2 blue. This Broodstar, the single copy Star, has affinity for artifacts, so that will reduce the cost. And again, it's going to affect this, but you know, the cheapest it's going to be is 2 blue. It's got flying, and its power and toughness are each equal to the number of artifacts you control. So artifacts are reducing the cost and pumping the creature. 6 instants, Thirst for Knowledge, there's 2 of those, 2 in a blue, draw 3 cards, then discard 2 cards from your hand unless you discard an artifact card from your hand. It irradiates 3 and a black, and it's one of these black cards where it's removing by giving and making a target creature -1/-1 less in its power toughness, and it's scaling on each of the artifacts you control. And then we've got Assert Authority, 5 and 2 blues, so 7 mana, but it does have affinity for artifacts. Counter target spell, if it's countered this way, remove it from the game instead of putting it into its owner's graveyard. So it's a counter spell with exile on it, and its cost can be reduced through the number of artifacts you control, down to a minimum of 2 blue. 22 land. So we have 11 islands. We've got 4 Seat of the Synods. These are nice. These just tap, in this case, for blue mana, and they're an artifact, so they're going to help with affinity. And you'll see in a moment, these ultimately got banned in various formats. 3 Swamps and 4 Vault of Whispers. Again, just comes into play, taps like usual mana, but it's an artifact. And also going to affect, of course, with all the other scaling stuff. Yeah, you notice this. And then we've got Thoughtcast. Affinity for artifacts. It's 4 and a blue. Draw 2 cards. So yeah. Interesting deck to play around with. Obviously you can make it a lot more powerful than this, and there was a lot more powerful tournament decks around, potential tournament decks. Yeah, we'll see. It'll be interesting as we move through this era, what happened through all the period in which this set or this block was legal in standard. Okay, best bit of the video. Let's take time to appreciate the islands in this set, I think. Should we do it this way? Makes it slightly bigger. It's always interesting, isn't it, when... oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah, it's always... So it's a bit misleading, I should say, it's more accurate. When they're listed out like this... Yeah, these ones are actually from 8th edition. Because it's just looking at a snapshot in the chronology of islands in this case. So we're going to see stuff either side. But these are the ones. So still pretty reasonable. Yeah, cheap. I'm assuming the spikiness isn't to everybody's taste. I think I did pick... Didn't I pick these as my choice for alternate no hand, no land artwork? I think I did. Yeah. I think this is the one I went to. It was rather a favourite, wasn't it? So, again, Let's do it. Oh, look at this. Super gnarly. Yeah, I just can't help myself. I'm always curious what came out either side. So these are all Magic Gathering Online's things. Oh, that's cool. Awesome. Excuse me. Yeah, got a bit of a throat again. Okay, so let's do our land first. Sea of the Synod, banned in Modern. I wonder why. Yeah, it's been reprinted quite a number of times in the Commander decks. Elves vs Inventor, dual decks, Plain Chase. It was in 2004 World Championship decks as well. Yeah, interesting that, isn't it? Like, it's more expensive in the World Championship decks. And then we've got Vault of Whispers. I will drill down in a moment. It's just these are both the same type of land, so we'll get the same thing going on here. Nice. Yeah, banned in Modern. Slightly more expensive in the World Champ decks. Oh, it's in a Secret Lair up. And Warhammer as well. Hang on. Oh yeah, different artwork. Threw me for a moment. Okay, let's go down through this. Interesting. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so here's a full cycle. Here they've also included Darksteel Citadel as well. But let us do this. It's been removed here. Interesting. Oh, because of course it wasn't. Oh yeah, I now get it. Or do I? I'll have to look at that. See where that comes in. So here we go. Here's the one of each of the colours. Very nice. Yeah, so Darksteel Citadel, if you're curious, was obviously the colourless one, adds colourless mana. But if you look at the grand scheme of things, you'll see it actually didn't come out till Darksteel. Surprise, surprise, it's in the name. So then that leads us on to the question, I suppose, or at least leads me on to the question, is what other artifact lands have there ever been? So if we do type artifact and type land and then is first printing. And you will notice here, if we put these in release date order, ascending. So here's all our Mirrodin stuff. Here's our Darksteel. And then we get these. So the reason why these are here is because these were double face cards. So you have an artifact on one side and a land on the other. So let's go through So, but we get to here, so this particular set, which is Modern Horizons, which is rather funny because didn't we find out that artifacts were banned in, well, artifact lands are actually banned in Modern, but these come into play tapped. They do have indestructible on them, and they do fix for mana, but they are still artifacts, so you know you could leverage them in an affinity deck. Darkmoss Bridge, Josford Bridge, Goldmire Bridge, Mistfall Bridge, Razortie Bridges. So all the bridges you can see, and some of these. Oh no, it's all. Hang on. So it's all Modern Horizons too. Okay. What's this? As is this. So we do have a colourless one as well. Generates colourless mana. But additionally, it can also be used to add 1 mana of any colour, but only to cast artifact spells or activate abilities of artifacts, and it has modular 1 on it. Okay. We've also got some artifact lands cropping up in Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. We've got this, which is another double face, one with a land, and then in this case artifact creature on the other side. That's cropping up. That cropped up in what? Midnight Hunt. And we have these ones, the Lost Caverns of Ixalan, but are there because of the fact that they're. Oh, they are actually... Okay, so this is interesting. So, yeah, we've got legendary artifacts on one side and legendary artifact lands on the other. Okay. But that's not the case with all of them, is it? No. So, yeah, mixed bag from Lost Caverns of Ixalan. So it's interesting, isn't it, how they held off introducing any form of artifact land. If we ignore these, because you know these are artifacts on one side, lands on the other, yeah, really held off revisiting that until the Modern Horizons set, or Modern Horizons 2. Bottle Gnomes, yeah, this has been kicking around for quite a number of years. If you go back, you can see Tempest. And we have looked at this before, way back. So life game, creature type, erratum on this. Okay, it's a martyr. Creature that sacrifices themselves for a benefit. And yet, something we have revisited before, but it's probably been a little while. Yeah, first one was a Catian Munich. Oh, my favourite. The Fiends. Oh dear. Oh, of course, all of these Chimera. Yeah. And the attendants as well. Yeah, some interesting stuff around this period in terms of, you know, cards that were namesakes for the corresponding dragons. And of course, Blood Pet. Yeah. And more recently, Dig Site Conservator. Oh, it's nice artwork. Oh yeah, of course, Burnished Heart as well. I think that's been reprinted quite a few times, hasn't it? Often ends up in Commander. Oh yeah, way back from Theros days. Yeah, it looks like I made a mistake, didn't I, here? Keep forgetting to do that. So actually the first one was Tempest Efreet. That's the very first instant. Just make sure it's the same, yeah. Most recent one. Okay. Oh, Broodstar. So it was reprinted in Plain Chase. What do we got it tagged up as? Affinity for artifacts and evasion. I'm interested in this as well. Like how many creatures have been printed, or anything been printed, which does scale off artifacts in various ways. So we'll have a look at that. 27 affinity cards in total. So this is now as good a time as any to look at the amount of affinity that we have generally kicking around in Magic. Yeah, and this caused a lot of problems. So let's see how long it lasted for and whether it did indeed even come back. Okay, so there's all our Mirrodin stuff. It's on this scale and tooth. So if you look through, so we've got it in blue, colourless, blue again, but now we're up to dark steel, red because of Furnace Dragon, and we get into Fifth Dawn, blue again, and also, yeah, what a colour to pick for affinity anyway. Like, yeah, all the affinity, and I wonder what the control meta looked like around that time. Like in terms of like counter spells. Sahili the Gifted. Okay, so did come back for one card for Kaladesh, but they didn't call it Affinity. So sort of snuck it in there. So Sahili, Emery, Lurker of the Lock, Seri, Commander 2018. Throne of Eldraine, Modern Horizons, funnily enough. Rarity Heist. So, question for anybody watching this that's either or, well, modern or played Modern Affinity or has dabbled in Modern. I'm not up to speed at all on Modern. I have one Modern deck, which was that deck they released. Wizards released like a pre-con Modern deck, so I have that. But yeah, what's the current state of play with Affinity in Modern? I'd be curious if anybody knows. Please educate me in the comments section, as I always like to be educated in the comments section. So generally, you know, the whole cost less for each concept. What about just so yeah, there's a number of things in here for each. And then now you'll notice, I think, if I've got this right, this won't show affinity because, hold on, yeah, because that's in the reminder text and not in the body of the text itself. But I was just curious as generally what other sorts of cards you know, have that and don't mention affinity, or like scaling off of that when that first started. So what have we got? So we've got mana scaling off of artifacts here. Then we get up to Mirrodin. You'll notice here, look, it doesn't. These are scaling off of that again. So we've got a number of cards here that scale off of artifacts in some way, but aren't doing it through affinity. In connection with affinity, and of course it's going through the whole block. What's this? Dissension. Shadow Maw, Conflux, just get these in the right order. Spores of Evil. So yeah, way back in Ice Age really, and of course yeah. Imagine. So yeah, not surprised in the formats that it's legal in. It's either banned or restricted. Of course, Blinkmoth Urn. Yeah, and there's other interesting place, if you're looking for interesting artifacts, because we got into this area of, artifacts with a, coloured casting cost in here, and were multicolour as well. Created really interesting artwork borders as well. And of course we got stuff in green as well, which is just going after artifacts. Just happens to be that the wording reflects this search. Frogmite. So we're going to get a whole load of cards here, very similar if we drill down. So yeah, just the whole affinity for artifacts thing. Is there anything else really I can add to this? I don't know. I mean, one thing we can do, just out of curiosity here, is so if I do CMC of 4, and we probably, and a power, oh there we go, power
No. Have we done this before? No. Toughness. Yeah, so there's a whole load of, as you won't be surprised, there's a whole load of 2/2s for 4. And if we do this, it's in paper, not his. What you will normally see is there's some reason here. Oops, no, I've got to do that. There we go, that's better. Yeah, there's going to be some reasons why it's higher casting cost. So yeah, within the rules text. I don't think, and I could be proved wrong in a moment, I don't think there's ever been a 4/4 for 2 vanilla creature. Oh, sorry, 2/2 for 4, I meant to say. Not 4/4 for 2. 2/2 for 4. But it's interesting as well to see clusters of these 2/2s. So here, mirrors, look. It's a whole load of griffins. Griffins are interesting because they got like flying on them, and then they have this ETB ability. But yeah, there's quite a number of 2/2s for 4 around this time. And then these are the other ones, these chimeras. So they were all 4 to cast, and they're all 2/2s, but they've got these pump abilities on them. Another griffin there. And if you bring it up to date, I mean, we're getting into realms of what would be this. Oh, there we go. Doctor Who. But you know, I can spend a long time in Scryfall just, you know, doing stuff like this, just looking at a point on the curve and saying, okay, well, it's interesting what combination, you know, if you have a 2/2 for 4, like what else are you getting, or what is the what's the extra bit there? Now, of course, if we get down to 2/2 for 3, then we're getting into an area where you're likely to get a grey ogre, where you're having a vanilla 2/2 for 3. And I suppose, you know, as a rough rule of thumb, you could say that's true. I suppose where. So if, say, we're looking at this, we did this instead. We've got a hill giant. So this is another interesting thing to just play around with, is sit like one above the curve in terms of, you know, CMC, and then put the power toughness so that it's just sort of one below that value, and just seeing what you get. And I'm always interested in like the presence of vanilla creatures. That fascinates me. Like when you put, you know, vanilla creatures throughout the history of Magic on a curve, what sort of curve do you get? And you can just keep going up and up and up. Was one thing you notice is when you've got them out chronologically like this, you get a lot of these legends coming up, you know, these like high casting cost legends are actually just
vanilla creatures. Okay, so now we've got the Myrs, or one of the Myrs here. Mirrodin, again in Plane Chase. So I think there was a plane, yeah, there was a, wasn't there a blue artifact Plane Chase deck, I think? And then it did re-emerge in Scars. Because in Scars of Mirrodin, and that second Mirrodin block, affinity for artifacts was done in a slightly different way through Metalcraft. Interesting, they're referencing charcoal diamonds. So if you look at this, if I can get both of those on screen at once, you can see charcoal diamonds. 2 enters the battlefield taps for black mana. With a Leaden Myr, it's 2. It doesn't enter the battlefield tapped, generates black mana, and is a 1/1. So yeah, fits in. We've looked at mana board dorks a lot before, and we've got these. This is part of this cycle here. So copper, gold, iron, leaden, silver. And if we come into here, sort them by colour. There you go. So the gold one was white, silver generated blue, leaden black, iron red, and copper was green. And if we do this, you'll notice that actually this is quite a good way to show you. So when they were printed up here, so if I can do this, let's just set MRD. So again, you know, it's a weird thing going on with the colours here. But when they were reprinted in Scales of Mirrodin, they benefited from the. They also had these watermarks as well. So you know you could differentiate between cards that were part of the Mirrodin faction, ones that were Phyrexian, and then ones that were neither. Again, you know, I've always found the use of watermarks to be pretty useful generally, particularly if you're drafting or doing any sort of limited, when you're in a scenario where you're not familiar with the set. It can be pretty useful, again depending on I suppose how they've been used. But here we have Lodestone Myr, so 4 for a 2/2, so another 2/2 for 4. This one you get slightly more though, a trample. And for this one, if you tap an untapped artifact you control, then it gets +1/+1. So it doesn't have affinity on it. So it's the sort of reverse. Instead of making it cheaper through affinity, its mechanism is to make it bigger, both in terms of power and toughness, through tapping untapped artifacts. And we get into this idea of shade pump, where effects are given arbitrary amount of +1/+1 until end of turn, as opposed to fire breathing, so +1/+0, and armouring, as they're calling it here, +0/+1. And then this whole area of tapping to fuel artifacts, which became a thing through Improvise as well. And that, see when that was kicking around from this time, I'll remember to correctly put that in and order them. So yeah, really, Lodestone Myr. We see it in Magic Origins. And then, yeah, Æther Revolt, got quite a number here. So, off the top of your head, if you try and think of the artifact sets, what do you tend to think of? Well, original Mirrodin block, Scales of Mirrodin, and then Æther Revolt. Are we up to
I'm not sure, but I'm not very good at this, remembering where we got to the point at which we were 2 set blocks. I think this was around the period of 2 set blocks. Æther Revolt. Was it Kaladesh and Æther Revolt? I think I'm right. And then a few random ones here. So Dominaria, Commander. What's this? Modern Horizons again. Although that's the original Modern Horizons, not 2. Throne of Eldraine. Commander Legends. Neon Destiny. And then Warhammer, of course, yeah. And the Brothers' War. And yeah, I suppose the other one, was it Antiquities, would be the original artifact set. I always get a bit confused early in Magic because some sets, it was almost like they started off trying to be one thing and then ended up going in a different direction. Myr Enforcer, another affinity for artifacts card. 4/4 for 7. Yeah, so same thing here. Yeah, French vanilla, because the only rules text entry in it is it has what do you call it? Keyword. So if it's the only thing there is keyworded, apart from that, it's just got casting cost and power toughness. Then it's what's referred to as a French vanilla. Well, creatures and vehicles that have only keyworded abilities. Ooh, worse than Sojourner's Companion, which is a 7/4/4, but it does have artifact land cycling on it. So, the question is then, at least in my mind, and maybe you've already guessed, is if you have a CMC of 7 and a power of 4 and a toughness of 4 in Magic, what else do you get? I would hope you get something pretty amazing. Oh, you get Gabriel Angelfire as a starting point. Yeah, so it's funny when you do all of these ones where there's a massive difference between the casting cost and the power toughness. I tend to find that often you get some amusing legends from legends come up. Yeah, during upkeep, Gabriel gains one of the following abilities. Gostadurk. First strike, creatures with Island Walk may be blocked as if they did not have this ability. Pretty niche. If you're after like a niche commander, I think Legends is the place to go. And this one, creatures with Swamp Walk may be blocked as if they did not have this ability. Oh, there's definitely some stuff here that makes me smile. Wow. Oh, of course, yeah. Phage the Untouchable. Oh, yeah. Platinum Angel was in the set, wasn't it? 4/4 for 7. You can't lose the game, and your opponents can't win the game. Harness, Errant Ephemeral. Yeah, the other time you saw sometimes this like vastly over the top casting cost, and I'm not sure how much this was a thing, but where I've seen it sometimes is with suspend cards.
Yeah, like I said, I could just spend ages playing around with power toughness and CMC. The curve generally I find is a really interesting thing to durdle around with in Scryfall. Which is why I think I've mentioned, you know, for set musings, whenever I do a set musing going forward, I'm, you know, pretty much definitely going to do my slicing against a curve for quite a bit of it. I'll still do cycles, but yeah, slicing against a curve and colours is really interesting to do. 3 3s for 7, you better be getting something good. I mean, obviously there's going to be ones where there's a slight wiggle with the power toughness in relation to one another. Oh, Lunar Avenger. Two 2s for 7. Not quite enough for a command for a theme in command here, I don't think. Oh, 1/1s for 7. I mean, surely not. What's the lowest we can go without it dying when it comes into play? Yeah, it's not going to even be... I don't know how it records those. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, these would be the ones where something here is obviously scaling the power toughness so they don't just die when they come into play. And I imagine there's a whole load of, you know, on the curve, quite a number of higher casting cost cards that do that. So yeah, we've gone off down a bit. Oh, there's Broodstar. So I don't know. If we do that, like, what's the biggest? Yeah. So what are we saying? The nothing above. Nothing above. Would it be 9? Yeah. So nothing. Sorry. Greater than 9. So yeah. Sorry. Nothing above 10. Yeah. Okay. Myr Retriever. Another 1/1 for 2. It's not a mana dork though. A Death Trigger Self. It's a recursion artifact, regrowth artifact, similar to Junk Diver, and similar to Workshop Assistant. So yeah, lots of self-death trigger cards. What about recursion artifact? Not that many. And not something I've looked at before, so let's have a look. Yep. Argivian Archaeologist. Ooh, nice artwork. Oh yeah, these. Of course, modular. Well, that's something to look forward to. Trading Post. Trading Post makes me smile. Spitting out goat tokens, yep. What was the other thing now I was curious about? Oh, regrowth artifacts. Did I accidentally do the same thing? No. I suppose a number of these do double duty. Oh yeah, there's Buried Ruin. That's always interesting in an artifact heavy deck. When did that first appear? Was that the set? Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah, do I have the first printing criteria anyway? I think I do. Yeah. And we got Glisser as well. From Mirrodin Besieged. Cool. Okay. Nim Shrieker. How's it going to categorise this? Evasion and synergy artifact. Yeah, well, evasion, it has flying, but then it's got this scaling off of artifacts, which we had a little bit of a look at earlier. This is just the blue one, so don't really need to dig down there. Somber Hoverguard, 6 for a 3/2. Again, affinity for artifacts. Yep, has evasion. I mean, in terms of and I'm sure I've looked at this before. Oh no. Flying artifacts, quite a few of those. Starting off with the Hive. And we've got interesting things like this, like Dancing Scimitar. So all very, you know, I mean, I'm trying to think at what point, so, you know, we eventually end up with equipment, but there are a few cards, I don't know if this is one, I don't think it's considered to be, no. But there are some cards which are more equipment like before there was equipment. Oh, there's Ornithopter. That's another one I was thinking of as a flying artifact. And we've got things like Primal Clay, which are pretty interesting. It's been reprinted a few times. Cropped up in M13 as well. Scarecrow. How many of those are there? 300. Now, if I do, where it gets interesting, I suppose, well, again, I find it interesting. If I do, say, colour ID, so if you do ID of 0, so 198 cards which have flying on them and have no colour identity at all. So quite a number there. And if you do this, negate that. So everything that does have a colour identity is 129. So in terms of flying artifacts, that actually came in here, although it was conditional, in terms of also had colour identity somewhere, in this case in an activation cost. Now in terms of flyers that were not, you know, where you had to actually invest money in the artifacts, we had to invest money in the casting cost, and we're getting up to, what is it, Future Sight. Again, yeah. here, like shards, interesting place to look for. Artifact creatures. In fact, that whole block is well worth poking around in. And you've got other things like Glinthawk Idol as well. Yeah, these ones that start out as an artifact and then turn into a creature under certain conditions. Steel Wall. Yeah. Drawback is that it can't attack. Better than Wall of Wood. 0-3 with Defender and green. And then Excavated Wall. So over time, the whole walls can't attack. Yeah, that was shrink wrap into walls anyway, but then they put, defend. They keyworded it with Defender, ultimately. And while we're on the subject of walls, I mean, you can, if we do artifacts that are also of type wall, of which there are a number. Going right back to living wall, you got things like Necropolis, which counts as a wall. So here, back then, of course, we weren't seeing like hybrid stuff, so it's an artifact creature here. But you've got in here, this actually counts as a wall, so it's a wall as well. If we go into here, you can see that we got a subtype of wall there. And that didn't really happen there, that didn't happen until here. Yeah. What's this as? Has that been? Yeah, that's been redone as well. And the other thing is there were some sets where, there was a wall deck somewhere in there. I don't know again how many times that's cropped up, but that's a bit of a thing. In terms of like what's the highest wall? Like in terms of thinking of height as being toughness, maybe just as a way of thinking of that. So if you do toughness, oops. Greater than 6. Okay. 11 cards. Oh well. Looks like we have a... Do we have a cycle of those? Not sure. Maybe not. All of granite, all of shards. All of junk, all of denial, and if we just sort this by, rather than release date, by toughness, the maximum it goes up to is 8 wall of stone. That's a wall. Okay. Now, if you were to get rid of that and then do this, I nearly put in powerness, that's funny. Powerness and toughness. Then, okay, that's interesting how that's done that. Okay, so maybe I need to ignore double-sided, redo that. So now what's happening here is it's stuff that isn't. Maybe I'm better off doing this at minus stuff that isn't a wall. So let's try that. That's really what I was after. Okay, yeah. So we got Shapeshifter, which does this weird thing here. Okay, so staying away from the flip ones. Okay, Council of Four. Oh, this thing. Chorix, the Raging Isle. Okay. Assert Authority. So we're away from creatures now. So yeah, affinity for artifacts. So we have a counter spell here that's reduced down. Similar to Stoic Rebuttal, which you instead had Metalcraft, so that scars the Mirrodin block thing. Iteration. You do also here, remember, it exiled things. And there's quite a lot of, and I always talk about in this, set musings, when I do set musings episode, is this interesting thing you get when you see, in this example, counterspell, but it applies to other things which we attribute to certain colours of magic, and seeing those things being teamed up with the set mechanic, I always find really fascinating. So whatever the set mechanic is, in this case, that in combination with counterspells. So, other things like red, burn in combination with a set mechanic, or in white, the things you normally associate, particularly on like instants and sorceries, I'm thinking here. So non-creature spells, I suppose, or even some things that have a ETB where the spell's stapled to them. Only ever printed in Mirrodin. Irradiate. Okay, removal creature toughness. Yeah, is a thing. And how long has it been around? Well, weakness. Now, in terms of relevance to the set, if you look at it, there's a lot of -2/-2 in the set. So if we did something like this, I think I'm good. I don't have to put speech marks around it. And then it's in order anyway. Interesting. Let's disfigure. So we don't have anything specifically in Scars of Mirrodin. So I'm just trying to think of a better way of doing this. If I take out that, do that, and maybe something like that. If I can actually spell target correctly, of course. There's Echoing Decay again. Well, that's nice. Actually, that's quite a good way of doing it. So instant speed removal, where it's something in here is -2ing something. -2ing something. So with the -1/-1, There's Irradiate. Interesting. Got Loose Hope with Scry on it. Dark Blast in City of Guilds. Puncture Bolt. Yeah, you see the sometimes there's like some red spells as well and some green spells and yeah. And these instant speed ping. Well, I suppose ping is damage, but you sort of know what I mean. Now, was that Grasp of Darkness? No. Again, we're just going through the curve here. Oh, flatten, that was it. Minus was the -4. Yeah, Grasp of Darkness and flatten. Interesting, because Grasp of Darkness was like double black. Did that take out... yeah, I could do a search probably, but the card I'm thinking of was it Phyrexian Obliterator. I'm trying to remember if that was a 4/4 or a 5/5. But just going up the curve as Dismember. Yeah, always important to have answers for things if you print a ridiculous card in a set. That was 5/5. And that was originally in New Phyrexia. So the -5 Oracle thing. Dismember. Yeah, it was also New Phyrexia. Nice. Thirst for Knowledge. Draw 3 cards, discard 2. So I'm sure it's going to have here, yeah, Compulsive Research. Discard Outlet. Artificer's Epiphany. Similar to Practical Research. So you can see there's these interesting condition attached to also. Draw 3 cards, then discard 2 cards from your hand, unless you discard an artifact card from your hand. So if you do that, then you don't have to do the discard. And then we have Compulsive Research as a tag, which you draw 3, then discard 2, unless. So there's a number of cards that do that. And again, if we do that on some sort of timeline, because it's interesting, isn't it? Sometimes the namesake card, like retrospectively gets applied. So we have Compulsive Research, 2 in a blue, land card, but Thirst for Knowledge came before that, and Probe came before that, but it had this kicker thing as well. And then in addition, we've got Thirst for Meaning and Thirst for Discovery. Notice as well, Compulsive Research is sorcery speed. Thirst for Knowledge is instant. Thoughtcast, yeah, card draw, but with this affinity as well. So, and Worsen Ancestral Recall. So that was draw 3 cards for single blue. Thought Monitor without a body. So that has an ETB on it, which you draw 2 cards. Had affinity as well, but that looks like that came from was it Modern Horizons 2? Is that the symbol for that? Yep. It's also in Jumpstart. Æther Spellbomb. So, a neat way of having utility, and because it comes in as an artifact, you've got that ability to fuel affinity. It's an egg. Artifacts have to be sacrificed to do something. So, you know, with these sort of things, because you can see them coming. And yeah, cycle of spell bombs. Of which only two there look like they've been reprinted. That one's a few times. As is that. And these a mirrored pair? Yeah, thought so. So that's the Tooth, the other one. It's a namesake spell. Yeah. I think everybody knows what namesake spells are by now. And yeah, affinity for artifacts. Serum Tank. Used charge counters. Was reprinted in Plain Chase. Oh, what's this? Artifact all. Artifact full. Oh yeah. Okay, so yeah. Well, that's clever. So it's artifact full. So stuff that's triggers off an artifact coming into play rather than being in play. Okay. That's neat. I learned something new. So there's a keyword tag for that then. Okay. Yeah, it was a thing. Okay. That's interesting. So you've got stuff that's assisted by artifacts being in play, but then other stuff that's assisted by them just coming into play. Oh, there's Glint Orc Idol. Oh, these, yeah, the cycle of talismans. It's a mana rock, which we've looked at before. It's part of a cycle. You can see this has been reprinted a few times. Part of a bigger cycle. So let's just see how they relate to one another. Okay, so here we go. You can see, so here's our cycle from Mirrodin, and then we've got a cycle here from Modern Horizons. So what's the difference? So with these, what is it, blue, black, so these would be allied, and these are enemy coloured ones. And then something else I wanted to look at here. Oh, that's right, yeah, you've got Pristine Talisman. So in terms of the term talisman, let's see how that's used. By looking at the name. Oh yeah, those ones. Oh yeah. Remember these? Ice Age, of course. Yeah, nice. Actually, oh, talisman. No, I wanted to do is first printing, didn't I? So yeah, the talismans from Ice Age, then these ones, then these ones, and then some sort of random ones really, which is called Talisman
Soul Talisman, Trickster Talisman, Reaper's Talisman, Blood Sprout Talisman. All the talismans. Do 5-colour talisman. Oh, and there's the tooth. And, you know, if you look through Magic's history, one interesting thing here is often you get these sort of, I don't know, body parts things, I suppose. Or, you know, crown, sceptre. That's the sort of thing I'm thinking of, you know, these different parts. That probably wasn't very good example here. That was the other one I was trying to think of. The Tooth of Ramos. So we have the Chiss-Goria one. Okay. And then we have Ramos. Eye, heart, horn, skull and tooth. And that was actually a full cycle as opposed to being like a mirrored pair. And then you get these other things where you get partials, like, you know, 3 of something. Particularly, I think, was it scepters and the crowns, maybe. Those sort of things. What did I do there? Oh, that's why. That's better. Cool, and there we have it. Well, I've thoroughly enjoyed that, actually. I know it was a bit more, even more laid back than usual. I was listening to some nice music in the background, which is that peaceful meditation while I was doing this. Oh yeah, definitely looking forward to next week when we get to look at one of my favourite things, which is block constructed. So we'll be looking at a deck from the appropriate tournament where that was a thing, and yeah, I'll be picking that deck after I finish filming this morning's videos. So thanks once again for watching. Bye for now, and I will catch you in a future video.